thank you, Mario, and thank you to Amanda and everybody who's helped organize this and bring me here tonight. I'm honored to be here. And I'm also very excited and grateful to have two members of my pro-founder team in the back, Kate, Rachel. Very nice to see your faces. Very happy you're here. So I'm going to blitz through these slides because there are a lot of them, and I speak quickly anyway. If anyone really misses what I'm saying, just raise your hand, and I will know that means slow down. Deal? Okay. The first text assigned to me in my sophomore philosophy of science class was this. Anyone read this? I won't take it as the slow down hand. Right. Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions. This important work analyzes the, of course, structure of scientific revolutions and the kind of evolution of science and scientific thought. Now, I remember thinking as a liberal arts major, wow, I really haven't taken that many science courses, but I thought science sort of proved things and was about facts that were exactly as they were. They weren't really questionable. And it seemed a bit audacious to start the class off this way, but I loved this. I loved this about this particular course and all of my philosophy courses. They often asked questions that were aggressive or audacious and helped me have an excuse to question what otherwise had been unquestionable in my life. Okay. This book left me with many ideas. One of them was this. Communities, scientific communities in particular, as the book described, operate with these sets of beliefs. No one operates alone. Nobody works alone or studies alone or has these ideas off in a vacuum. None of us do, right? And we're all part of these communities with agreed upon beliefs. And Kuhn coined the word paradigm. These sets of beliefs, these worldviews sort of form collectively how we see the world. And they literally inform how science is done. Often, I mean, Kuhn, I had to write this down so I could get the quote right, but Kuhn described many scientists' research, given that this is the reality that they operate within these paradigms, as a strenuous and devoted attempt to force nature into the conceptual boxes supplied by professional education. Doesn't sound much like an innovative path of discovery and learning new things. It sounds like let's get data and shove it into the existing way of thinking, right? This was a surprise to me. But these paradigms literally define what we see, and they define the worldview that we stand on, that we put weight on every day. And sometimes, though, scientists and others discover things or stumble upon things, ideas, experiences that are anomalies. They don't fit within the paradigm that already exists. So easy examples, there are all sorts of easy examples throughout the book, which was helpful for me. Let's say we all believed for a really long time that the world was flat, and then somebody sails around it. That would not really fit within that old paradigm, right? And let's say a lot more people do the same, and other pieces of data and insights come up. Slowly, over time, something really fun and interesting happens. The anomalies build up, and the old paradigm starts to become less and less relevant and less meaningful, and it bursts, right? So a new paradigm then slowly emerges. And sometimes that brave soul, maybe the one that's pioneering the discoveries and the new insights, puts weight on that new world and invites other people to join them. And Kuhn called these shifts scientific revolutions when the new paradigms emerged. And in fact, he said they were the tradition-shattering complements to the tradition-bound activities of normal science. So this made me question my own ways of thinking. I mean, we're all part of communities with agreed-upon foundational beliefs, and it made me start to wonder what mine were and how I was being influenced by them and what I might be missing that didn't fit inside the world that I saw every day. So conscious or not, we all think we know something about the world, and we gravitate towards others who think similarly, and we gravitate towards ideas that fit easily into the way we see things. And it's very easy to go about our days without questioning our fundamental assumptions, and even though they can limit what we're capable of seeing around us. So usually we're only open to interpreting the world in ways that already validate what we know to be true. But thankfully, these anomalies happen to us whether we're looking for them or not. I tend to be an anomaly seeker. I like things that kind of shake things up and make me question what I originally thought. But even if we don't try to seek them out, events, experiences, ideas come at us that make us baffled or confused or question what we thought, maybe in a big way or a small way. And it's easy to brush them off and say, well, I'm crazy, or that didn't really happen, or that can't really be true, or that's just not the way things work, and not really pay attention to them. But sometimes these anomalies are true, right? And we're not crazy, and they can redefine the way we see the world. a well-timed, powerful new insight has the potential to shape an entirely new paradigm around it over time, and it shifts the scope of possibility that we see in the world. So an interesting sort of paradigm shift happened for me a few years ago when I was in business school and I was learning about all of these ways that new organizations were pioneering and putting out into the world new ideas, new products, and forming new markets around them. It reminded me of this sort of idea of an anomaly out there in the world and a whole new paradigm forming around it. And I loved this. And as I was learning about all of these things, I remember one evening I stayed and heard a gentleman named Dr. Muhammad Yunus speak. Maybe many of you have heard him speak, or at least know his work. But he, for those who don't know, sort of pioneered, among other wonderful leaders, pioneered modern microfinance with his work in Bangladesh with the Grameen Bank. And basically, again, if microfinance is a new word for you, this looks like a very smart crowd. I bet it's not, but just in case, for the purposes of tonight, let's just think about that as financial services and products for the poor. So I'm hearing Dr. Yunus speak, I'm hearing him tell his story, and the biggest aha sort of anomaly that came at me that evening wasn't even about financial services for the poor, wasn't about sort of his own very accessible story of sort of going into a village in Bangladesh and reaching into his pocket and sharing a few dollars with this village, and the rest being this magical microfinance history. And it's not magical, it's actually real. But the big anomaly for me was that he began to talk about poverty in a new way, and he began to talk about the poor as entrepreneurs. So having been in Silicon Valley for a number of years at that point, I didn't think of entrepreneurs, I admit. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I didn't think about entrepreneurs being somebody like this, living on the other side of the planet in a very different circumstance than Silicon Valley, right? And I also didn't think about the poor as entrepreneurs. There was a mismatch for me there. So this really was an anomaly for me and changed the way I saw things. And I was so intrigued that I jumped ship, and a few weeks later, after hearing Dr. Yunus speak, I was in East Africa trying to learn what I could from these new entrepreneurs. And sure enough, I met amazing individuals who were using their gifts and their talents to be very entrepreneurial and creative in their lives. The images that I saw of them, of these people who happened to be poor but were first and foremost entrepreneurs, they were in scenes and in communities and spaces of abundance. They had full hands, not empty ones. They weren't asking for a handout. They were just doing their business the best they could. And so each of these entrepreneurs for me was an anomaly. What these anomalies did for me built up a new paradigm and changed the way I thought about poverty and potential and possibility in the world. So it redefined entrepreneurship and actually made me, for the first time ever, interested in entrepreneurship and business in this particular way. And it started to change the definition of things for me, right? So at its core, I believe entrepreneurship is about deciding that you want to solve a problem in the world and making things better tomorrow than they are today. I think entrepreneurs see a need, and they want to address it, and they do whatever it takes to get there. They take steps every day in a very active way, providing a product or service or whatever else it is to make that improvement. And in their own way, they're providing these tiny little revolutions. Sometimes they provide really amazing innovations. Sometimes they're just making something a little bit better every day right in front of us. But I believe most entrepreneurs, or all entrepreneurs, do this at least in a very small scope. Some make things better for themselves or their families or a handful of customers. Some think in a broader scope, and they make things better tomorrow than today for their communities. They're social entrepreneurs. They have a bigger picture and a bigger perspective about how the change that they want to affect in the world and who they want that change to be for. So the key difference for me between entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, if you're asking, is the perspective on who it matters who it matters to affect. And so for social entrepreneurs, if indeed we can say, well, social is kind of like thinking about the community as the customer in a very, very broad sense and making things better for the community, we as the community should probably want them around, right? So a natural question might be, you might be asking yourselves right now, well, gosh, how do we as the community support these entrepreneurs, social and otherwise? How do we support them and keep them around? I think it's actually pretty simple, and there are two main things that they need. One, the right resources. So resources, we can list all these off, beautiful office space, capital, technology, whatever it is, but it has to be fitting. It has to be the right thing at the right time. Maybe it sounds obvious, but I think there's often mismatches in places where a ton of capital over long periods of time just continues to be dumped in a particular way, and it's not the right fit. For me, as I mentioned, I was fascinated by this idea of my view of the poor changing to see them as entrepreneurs. And it really didn't fit with all the ways that I thought I had interacted with or served or whatever the poor in the past. I had only ever provided a resource, usually of money, sometimes of time, trying to volunteer, do something helpful, in a way that was a donation or a handout, right? And I was giving kind of based on, truthfully, feelings of guilt or shame of my own relative wealth and my own desire to try to do something, even if it didn't quite feel like it was a fit and it was right, but I was responding out of that place, right? I also felt like I was responding only when I was cornered, only when the negative emotions built up enough that I had to act and do that so I could go on with my day, or only when it was a really good bargain, right? For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can be changing someone's life. It's really pretty good pitch. But sadly, my role wasn't one of this, it wasn't the one I really dreamed of deep down inside. It wasn't a relationship. It was a transaction. It wasn't an interaction. It was me throwing change in the jar, pretty much, and buying my right to go on with my day and pay attention to the rest of my life. So the poor, it became this trade or this purchase, and the poor became disembodied and nameless and faceless. Not a pretty picture, right? So I was buying my distance through this interaction. But when I met real entrepreneurs who happened to be poor, I met them up close and personal, things changed. And in fact, no one asked me for a donation or a handout. They asked me, or they mentioned that what they needed next was a loan to do more of what they were doing and lift themselves out of poverty. Forget me. They wanted to do it themselves, and they were doing it themselves. So that's what we created Kiva to do. You can see that Sophia there is now online and has been funded. So as was already described, Kiva allows anybody with $25 and an internet connection and a credit card to go online, choose a specific entrepreneur in need, and lend them that money. And over time, 98.7% of the time, they'll get paid back and receive updates along the way about how that entrepreneur is doing. So that's Kiva. Over the last 5.5 years, it's been a really interesting journey. We have facilitated over $200 million in loans among people in 210 countries, and I think right now there are more than 1 million people total in terms of lenders and active lenders and active borrowers. So that's Kiva today. But there's more to share. So the entrepreneurs on Kiva are people who have stories of strength and empowerment, of life change and hard work, and these are the stories that we need to hear about one another. These stories validate our best conceptions of each other, validate the potential that exists in every one of us. And for Kiva, it's galvanized this particular community of people to step up and to pay attention to each other. It's galvanized people who want to hear others' stories, who want to respond to them in the appropriate way with the right resources. Now, the second thing that entrepreneurs need, though, is not just this right resources thing. They do need communities that see possibility. The Kiva community has become one of those, and I'm very excited about that and proud to have been part of that in the beginning. But this community, there's more that we need there, and there are a lot of other entrepreneurs in the world. It took me going all the way around the world to finally come back home and see in my own backyard, so to speak, what the community was there. And truthfully, a lot of the community they saw around me didn't feel like the most loving, supportive, warm, touchy-feely community that believed in great potential and possibility and was willing to take risks and step out on that, new paradigm with me. And it's not their fault. They're good guys. But a lot of this, the traditional, many traditional funding sources they don't have the incentives to take big risks or to step out on that new world with 1 or 2 anomalies floating around out there. Some do, but a lot don't. Now, the good news is, while they are important, these guys in suits, again, traditional funding, does provide 13-ish% of funding to private companies in the U.S. The better news is there are a lot of other more lovey-dovey people out there, our friends and family, that provide the other 87. I think this is a huge insight, and it, for me, was, again, an anomaly. See a theme? It's a big aha moment to say, whoa, you mean of all the private companies out there in the world, friends and family are providing the vast majority of funding? Well, what does that really look like? So over a year ago, my co-founder, and it does rhyme and there's just no way around it. I've tried so hard to rephrase that sentence, but my co-founder, Dana, and I started to interview entrepreneurs and say, well, what is this like for you? What was the process like when you reached out to friends and family to get that funding? And we heard stories of basically interactions that made relationships suffer. The interactions were scrappy and haphazard. They were offline, and often it was just somebody hitting up a wealthy uncle for a big check, and then Thanksgiving gets weird, right? So we thought, well, we should fix that. And also, wouldn't it be great? Because, I don't have a wealthy uncle, but I do know a lot of other people, and again, kind of Kiva style or Obama campaign style or whatever else style you want to do. We don't have the corner market on that. We could crowdfund, right? You could have more than just your family sitting around the table help fund you. If you could reach out to many people and get small amounts of money to not just lend, which is great, and its own beautiful, right sort of way of interacting, as I've said, I'm a fan, but what if you could get people to actually invest in these businesses the way other capital sources get to invest and share in the potential financial upside? That would be great. So that's what ProFounder does, and that's what, with Rachel and Kate and our amazing team, we have created it to do. You can raise investments from your community right now. Entrepreneurs can go to the site and create a profile, name their own investment terms around revenue share, and starting on Monday around equity too. We'll have other terms coming soon. It's just a matter of getting it all queued up. And they can actually invite people in, raise up $2 million. We help take care of all the legal compliance issues with you and make it really easy to actually do your own private offerings of stock with your company or a revenue share agreement or something that's a real investment so that your community can share in that journey, ups and downs and everything in between. And most important, of course, this is my theme, entrepreneurs get to tell their own stories. Yes, setting your own terms is really nice, better than having a bank or a VC or someone else tell you what the terms are. So this is nice. But most importantly, they get to say who they are in the world, what they're trying to do, and they get to talk about what may be a small or a big anomaly that they're chasing after to make something better in the world. So on ProFounder as well, we're excited because we're creating communities that see possibility. And as I said, this is the second, and I believe more important thing that entrepreneurs need. So as these communities provide the right resources and as entrepreneurs are choosing the terms that are best, I think something really beautiful is happening. Because what does this all have to do with my philosophy course and these nice words that I'm throwing out there and Thomas Kuhn, paradigms, anomalies, revolutions? Well, I very much believe that what we believe defines what's possible. It actually determines the level of possibility that we will see in the world. And when those anomalies come up, when there's great opportunities and new ideas that can change things in amazing, radically better ways, when they come up, we won't see them unless we as a community are open to that, unless we can champion entrepreneurs that are following that. Because what we believe, I'm going to say this 3 times for emphasis, it decides in advance what we're open to. It decides what positive change we can actually believe in and process. And the paradigms that we have of the world around us, and much more importantly of each other, literally create the reality that we live in. So what we believe about each other matters. And as I wrap this up, I just want to emphasize the stories we tell about each other matter, the stories we tell about ourselves matter, and the way that we participate in each other's stories and tell our collective story is very, very significant. So I'm not here to convince you of anything or sell anything. I'm here to remind us of things I believe we already know. So each of us has great potential. Real change is possible. We are the ones that make that change happen, no one else. And as we do that, amazing shifts can occur. So instead of seeing the poor as people only with stories of sadness and suffering and desperation, I am thankful because I've had this experience that has changed my paradigm, and I now see smart, hardworking entrepreneurs, and I see them everywhere now. And I know that my role doesn't have to just be one of donor or somebody throwing change in the jar and not really being engaged and involved, but I get to be a part of a community that supports people far and wide and also right down the street, people that are doing amazing things. I get to be someone that says, I want to be an anomaly seer. I want to be somebody that supports people on the edge doing new things. And what's really fun is, as I've been inspired by unexpected, to me, entrepreneurs in unexpected places, it's shown me that I can be an entrepreneur myself, and it took that for me to really believe that and change the way my own life path has gone. So, if you want to start your own revolution, or you want to make sure you don't miss being a part of a community that's supporting one, the first thing you need to do is choose what to believe and choose that tomorrow can be better than today. So be that person that's out there charting the way. Be that person that helps step out onto that new paradigm, pushes these new ideas forward, innovates, and be an early, brave new adopter. This is what I hope most in the future for all of us, and this is what I hope we can remind each other. And a little personal note at the end. This is what I hope for these two, here and here, that they can be these little revolutionaries in their lives. This is something I'm really excited to teach them, that they can keep their eyes open. Still have a few months before they're all cooked and ready to go. But they can keep their eyes open and question and discover things, that they can trust themselves enough to know when they see something that's new and true in the world, and they can be brave enough to tell the world about that. For me, they are the biggest surprise anomalies in my own life. That's another story. And I'm so excited for this adventure and all the others that I'm getting to be a part of, and hope, again, more than anything, that we can all decide to believe that tomorrow can be better than today. Thank you.